Considering the fact that I wrote this entire talk overnight, I would consider myself quite the procrastinator. Now, here's what a procrastinator's schedule for completing an assignment might look like. Oh, I'm sorry, no, this is the normal person's. So, the first 2 weeks you get a good jump out of excitement of the assignment of the project. Then in week 3 it starts to feel like a bit of a chore. Then finally in week 4 you realize that you don't have much time to finish this assignment. So you finish it off. However, here's what a procrastinator's might look like. So in week 1, you get home after the assignment was given to you, and you write your name at the top of the file. But then you realize that Microsoft Word has all these cool fonts, so you just have to try out every single one of them. Then you find yourself 2 hours later after 482 fonts, and then you realize that the normal sans serif font was really the most fitting of them all. Then in week 2, you realize that I've got to get this done. So you finish out the topic sentence, the first sentence, and then you write that whole thing. And then your friend asks you if you want to play duos on Fortnite. And that's just something you can't say no to. So you end up spending the whole week just messing around with your friends. Then in week 3, you're like, okay, come on, I've got to get this done. Then you muscle out the introduction. And then you just kind of slack it off after that, and then you find yourself with less than 4 days to complete an essay that has more than 5 pages. So, usually, this is the ideal schedule for a procrastinator, but most of the time it kind of ends up like this. Week 1, you don't do a thing. Week 2, same thing. Week 3, totally forget about it. Then the night before the deadline, you spend about, 8 hours of your night doing the entire thing. And that's pretty much what happened to me last night, as I wasn't sure if I was going to do this or not. So, you probably think I'm crazy for trying to bang out a TED Talk in less than 3 hours of a night. But that's what pushed me into this corner. That is what made me ask the question, why do procrastinators do this? What is the thought process behind the whole idea of procrastination? Why do we push things out to the very last minute? To take a closer look into my personal struggle with procrastination, let me tell you about an experience I had in America over this past winter. So, as most of you may know, I was recruited to play for a high school basketball team in Spokane, Washington. So, I gladly accepted, and while basketball was a very big responsibility of mine, I still had many things that I had to keep up with. I still had to do paces, I had to write articles for the school newspaper, and I still had very many responsibilities that I had to live up to in Spokane as I was living by myself without my parents. And while doing all of this, I still had to maintain a social life, a school life, and a life with my basketball team. However, with all these responsibilities, I still found myself choosing basketball and spending time with my teammates and friends over all of my other obligations. That I'm not saying that, they were more important or anything. However, I'm not saying that they weren't important. It was just my priorities were a little bit mixed up, and I ended up choosing basketball and teammates and friends over my other obligations. Now, basketball wasn't something that was not important. It is still very important to me, as well as creating bonds with new friends that I found in another city or a country. It's just that, in my mind, I tricked myself into believing that these more enjoyable obligations were more important than my other less enjoyable tasks. You might wonder why I would think that these more enjoyable things were more important than my priorities. That might be a common concept that the things like education and things like that are your priorities, but that's not what my brain told me as a procrastinator. The way I see it, there are 3 game modes to procrastination. There's first the Sandbox Mode. So you're pretty much just goofing around the whole time, just having fun, doing whatever you want, until you find yourself looking on YouTube and It's 3 a.m. and you're watching a makeup tutorial when you don't even know what a blender is. Then that's when you kind of enter into the campaign mode, as I like to call it. It's much more serious, there's more at stake, and it's more stressful. However, you still have time to complete this task as you're still only 2 weeks into a 1-month assignment. So it silences the sandbox mode temporarily, but since you still have time, you're still at risk at re-entering the sandbox mode. So after wasting a couple weeks, this is when you enter what I like to call the multiplayer mode. It is just panic, panic, and more panic. It's much more stressful, much more difficult, and you have much less time to complete the exact same assignment as you did before. However, you do eventually complete this task. After countless nights of no sleep and 26 energy drinks, it does happen. And that's when you feel like a champion, until you get your report card back, but that's a whole other problem. But in my research, I saw that all the funny videos and all the jokes and all the lighthearted depictions of procrastination all had one thing in common, and that was a deadline. Okay. In my research, I saw that all the funny videos and all the jokes and all the lighthearted depictions of procrastination all had one single thing in common, and that was a deadline, or a due date, or a finish line per se. And that's where the real problem lies, in my opinion. So take away all the jokes, take away all the deadlines, take away the stress, take away the panic, and put yourself in these shoes. And just like a student struggles to turn in their assignment and get it done in the first place, an adult has the exact same struggle. Entrepreneurs, people involved in the arts, and many other occupations, or even just losing weight or going on a diet, and just bettering yourself in general, they all face the exact same effect. Sure, I mean, many of you have amazing grades. Many of you finish homework accordingly and have no problem with deadlines whatsoever. But that's not where the problem is. That is just the less in-depth view of procrastination. However, putting your dreams and aspirations off until some other time is where the most dangerous form of procrastination lies. Being too fearful of what will happen tomorrow if I act on my dreams and aspirations today. I mean, we as teens, we feel like we have all the time in the world. Like, why wouldn't we? We're young, we have years and years ahead of us. We've got guts, we're edgy teens, we have courage, or do we? You see, if we truly had courage, then we would dive into our dreams and our goals full-heartedly. So if we do have courage, then why aren't we doing that same thing? Why aren't we just throwing all of our effort into chasing after our dreams and aspirations? In the end, it's because we have fear. Procrastination is something that we have to grasp and grab a hold of as young adults, or else it can come back to haunt us in the future. This fear cannot be what traps you in a cage and forces you to look upon what could have been if you never said the words some other time. Thank you.